Liz.
I know.
Do you like the article from DSA?
From on the what do you call it?
Electric.
Yeah, I sent you a note back that said yippee.
Yeah, twice.
Oh, did I send it twice? So yippee twice.
Yep. No, I thought that was, do you get DSA's emails?
No.
Oh,
The answer is no. I didn't get that one at any rate.
hi, Brian.
Good morning.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Just pulling up the agenda.
I was looking for mine.
It was on the invite.
Okay. It's on the invite. So then I go to calendar.
I can share screen here.
I don't see mine on my invite. I thought we got an email for it.
No, staff's been changing that, and they've been attaching agendas to the Zoom invite. So,
Here, I'll resend it to you.
Okay.
so, all right. And while you're doing that, I will begin the meeting by saying welcome to the City of Campbell Economic Development Subcommittee meeting of Thursday, August 12th. This meeting is being conducted via telecommunications and is compliant with the provisions of the Brown Act and Executive Order N2920 issued by the governor. The members are permitted to appear electronically. Members of the public will not be able to attend the meeting at the council chamber physically. However, the meeting is being live streamed via YouTube. Public comments for the Economic Development Subcommittee will be accepted by email prior to the meeting. And I believe if you are logged on into this meeting, you can press *9 and be recognized for comment. Okay. And I will now move to a oral request or public comment, I should say. Is there anyone in the chat? Let me look here. Is there anyone in the chat?
There is not.
There is not, thank you. And that we will close I keep getting emails in here that are interrupting, sorry. And the agenda topics are the current business climate, local and regional, property on the market and vacancies, business area opportunities, sales tax, and next steps to redefine economic development. And if I may begin, I'm not quite sure how we're going to move forward on this because council did change the economic development to be under the city manager, and the city manager is in the process of developing a new approach. And I think what we're meeting here today and discussing these topics is to help with defining how he and the council would like to move forward with economic development. I did review the current economic development policy. And I also went back and looked at the discussion that the council had on September 19th, 2021. I looked specifically at my comments to see where I was then versus where I am now. I encourage Brian to go back. You were at that meeting. It was one of your early first year meetings. But I thought it was a useful discussion.
So Liz, you said September 19th, 2021 was
2011, 2017.
2017. That makes more sense.
September 19th, 2017. Sorry if I was. And one of the big topics at that meeting was, what is economic development? And it was clear that people had on the council and staff had different opinions and of what economic development was. So I just offer that as in the background as we're having our conversations today on how to move forward with what economic development is. I would also offer that a year and a half, 2 years ago, when then Mayor Waterman and I were on the Economic Development Subcommittee, there was a discussion that this strategic plan was no longer appropriate and needed to be changed. And then one thing led to another and no follow-up happened. But there was a recommendation from the subcommittee at that point that this strategic plan was not appropriate, wasn't functioning, didn't work, whatever, needed to be changed. So the concept of needing change has been around for quite some time. Okay, and then I think the summary of what the current business cycle is. So these were topics that I put in the agenda because I wanted to make sure we had things that we could talk about on the agenda. So they may or may not be relevant, but why don't we go around the table and see what each of us are thinking. Again, Rob, I don't know quite how you're going to fit into this, so you'll have to help us with that. Susan, what are your thoughts to kick us off?
Well, it kind of goes into the next one about vacancies. I've been driving around Campbell and it seems like we do have a lot of vacancies. So regarding the local business climate, I'm wondering why so many? Is it all just because they closed during COVID? How many were existing before COVID? And then regionally, the whole issue of people now not having to go into work full time. Is that going to affect any of our business, i.e. someone like Barracuda or 8x8? And then regionally, the shortages that we're having regarding materials and workers, and then how does that impact what businesses are happening? If there's vacant buildings and you need to remodel, are you going to be able to afford to remodel because we don't have supplies or we don't have people? And so how do you help bring back businesses in knowing like they have to have improvements and that kind of stuff? And then additionally, the retail, you know, we got a lot of downtown's retail space, a lot of Winchester's retail space. Is that ever really going to come back?
So Susan, could I ask, Councilwoman Landry, could you kind of start with what you think the purpose of an economic development department is? What is it that the city, what's the city's role in economic development? I realize my questions got a little bit down into the nitty gritty, but big picture, what is it that we want economic development to do?
So biggest picture is we want viable businesses that can contribute to our income base for the city. We need the sales tax, we need the hotel tax. By having properties improve, we get more property tax. And so I see the city's role is, okay, so restating is to ensure that we are a viable city from a financial economic standpoint, and that the economic development department or person is to help facilitate that like, for instance, I had my first business come to Campbell that I brought in. And I know Michael has been doing some of that, where we try to get new businesses, we try to look for variety. But bottom line is help us be economically viable
Okay,
and help our businesses,
Okay.
encourage businesses.
okay. And I would offer that that's a good place to start, and I would support that. I think as the phrase goes, the devil is in the details, and we'll comment on that.
You said big picture.
I know, big picture is good. No, big picture is good. Brian, our city manager, Brian, what do you think?
I appreciate the question, and we could have a long discussion on just that point. I do think that economic development's looking at actually developing our business base over time. One, to keep steady revenues, but two, to diversify the risk in the city. And I think it's important to think back just a year ago when we saw sales tax and TOT drop, and our reliance on businesses across all sectors versus one sector that may be more dramatically impacted. And I, as we look at our revenue during the pandemic and sales tax with other cities, our percentage of revenue that comes from sales tax compared to other cities, we're more reliant, for lack of a better term, than most cities. Our percentage of sales tax to our revenue is typically, in the top 3 of all 15 cities. And so being mindful of that and the risk that comes with that, as we saw in the pandemic, when you see the impacts of those loss of revenues, is how do we diversify that economic revenue base in a way that's sustainable? And I think that comes to the variety of businesses, the portfolio that you're looking at. And, we could talk more when we get into next steps, but that's what Rob and I've been talking about specifically, is what is that mark and what does that portfolio look like, so that we can set up a plan to target those businesses and attract businesses. And part of that's going to have to be coming from our general plan when we have visions and land use issues, whether it's the Dell or downtown or other areas. But I see, and I would agree with Susan, that economic viability is important, but more businesses aren't necessarily better in the long run if it doesn't provide us some variety and security should there be another downturn. I think looking at diversifying that pool of businesses and thinking about new areas that perhaps would not have significant traffic impacts or other impacts on infrastructure, but yet can provide a level of security. I think that's important. As an example, just a couple, Liz, you and I talked briefly about these server facilities. Santa Clara is popping up, these server farms. Another untapped area are these fulfillment centers, Amazon fulfillment centers, where the distribution and shipping, because it's internet based, is all paying tax out of those fulfillment centers and where those are located. So looking at different venues and being creative, and I think honestly, looking back to where we were with our economic development plan, I think that's where we missed the mark of actually targeting and being aggressive. Is it do we want microbrews? Are we going to target microbrews so that our staff can be crafted, whether it's a consultant or internal staff, to actually go out and execute that? And I think Mayor Gibson's right. The proof's in the devil's in the detail. The proof's in the pudding. We can go out and recruit, but if we're bringing in and out to the Elephant Bar or Chick-fil-A to Denny's, that's not going to hit the mark, and we're going to continue to spin our wheels. So I think targeting those specific industries is key, and providing some guidance on the types of industries and the areas that we'd like to see them locate, and having a purpose to that, with the whole idea of stabilizing our economic base and diversifying it.
Okay, thank you. And Rob, how do you fit into this discussion?
Well, I'm here to support and help in any way I can. I know the the past was economic development was in community development. You know, the switch came before I came on board. Brian and I have talked. I'm here to help out in any way I can. I know economic development is very, very, very closely, must be closely aligned with the general plan, permitting, land uses. And so just echoing what the city manager said, and we had some conversations. One thing so the economic development plan adopted by Campbell is about 5 years old. It's no matter what, it's probably a good time just to relook at that. Two is, and this is just my opinion, has a lot of kind of broad goals, but not a lot of specifics. And I've looked at a couple other economic development plans of cities, and they, to the city manager's point, they get much more targeted in sort of where's the city want to go, what specific industries, tie that to land use, tie that to permitting, and have a consolidated plan. So be to really much more exact. And our thoughts were to start a process, if the council agrees, to start in the broad. And it's a good timing as we're have the general plan finishing up. There's gonna be a lot of focus on housing, but on a parallel track to look at economic development and really where the city wants to target new businesses and infuse that potentially into specific areas, right? If we want to bring in a diversity of of businesses in a certain part of the city where we can do some zoning, permit streamlining, outreach all around that, you just have a complete package. So I just did want to echo what Brian said, that I think kind of stepping back, having a process where we develop a plan and vision, and then from that you could fill in the operational components, right? You know, how do you best fulfill that vision through the staffing, the consultant, the tools, and the resources to get there. So just my thoughts.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to encourage you to listen to the September 19th, 2017 meeting. And I encourage you to listen to what I said, because you just said what I said. So I think that we are all on the same page in the sense that economic development is an important responsibility of the city, because we need the viable businesses, as Councilor Landry said, we need the viable businesses to contribute to the economic success of the city. And then the question is, how do we get there? How do we diversify the risk? We had a lot of conversations this past year on the challenges of the financial income, revenue income of the city. In the past, I have made a lot of comments about the C2 and C3 zoning. I can go over that in more detail in our conversations, Rob. But we all also, I think, came up at the general plan scope of work included an analysis of 3 different approaches to land use. We wanted to know what the right mix of land use was. What was the right combination of housing, business, retail, and office? And that we gave 3 scenarios, and we wanted to have those 3 scenarios to understand what you just spoke to and the city manager just spoke to, which is the general plan land use map. It has to work in consort with the types of businesses and where we want businesses to go. So I think we're all on the same wavelength about that. I think that one of the things that we need to be aware of, there's probably 2 things that I would say about the economic development approach that I don't think we've talked too much about yet, is 1, Campbell is impacted significantly by what happens around us. I mean, we're 3/4 of our city is surrounded by San Jose. Diridon Station in Googleville is, you know, a 13-minute light rail ride. about urban villages. I think we have 7 urban villages on our perimeter. So we are significantly impacted by what's happening around us. And I think the economic development scope somehow has to be very attuned to that for opportunities. I'm not going to say impacts as much as I'm going to say opportunities. Like, you know, what are some of the businesses that will support Google? You know, whether it's a print shop or a car repair shop, I don't know, but what would support that? The other one, I just making a note here. The other thing that I think would help, and I have said this in the past, is I think Morgan Hill in 2017 and before, I studied their economic development department and program. They had a superb program because they had a brand. The city of Morgan Hill had a brand, and they developed the brand, they came up with it, they leveraged that as the tool to attract and keep businesses. I just thought that was ever so successful. And I really liked the structure that brought to a program. These 10 points that are in our document, I don't think they're in line, and I think they're also missing an opportunity if Campbell has a brand. And then the last thing is that since 2017, things have changed substantively related to the jobs housing ratio. And Plan 2050, Brian knows, he's ad nauseum, I bring it up. Plan 2050 and the RENA numbers. We, at the general plan, when we were looking for the 3 scenarios, weren't really thinking, this is going back to 2016, we were not really thinking about regional planning challenges and the HCD and the Department of Finance and how they defined job-rich areas, transit-rich areas, you know, educational-rich areas. We didn't understand any of that. Now it's really important because Campbell has a huge housing demand put on it. And if we keep building office buildings, I'm just picking a discussion point. We're approving office buildings. We've got other things coming up. Are we making our jobs housing imbalance worse so that when we do the general plan and the land use, there's a context? It all comes back to the scenario. What is it that we want to see in land use that supports Campbell going forward and meet the picture that we want, but also being imposed on us? So I think the whole dynamic of what economic development means for Campbell has changed. I think it's changed because what's happening around us in San Jose and Google is amazing. I think what's happening to us in terms of the state definition of what our community has to provide and does currently contain. And then we need a game plan that works with the general plan land use map that has I'm going to use the term, a brand that Campbell can leverage to meet the program that we come up with. And that's why I have mentioned that I thought a consultant economic development company or individual was the right way to go, because we don't have that expertise in-house. We need some outside assessment of what does Campbell bring to the table, what could Campbell bring to the table, and then develop a strategy that blends with the land use map. I think we need data that at least I'm not aware of. I think we need data that defines, you know, what we said, what the general plan was supposed to do. What are the 3 scenarios of what's the right mix? And that, of course, has changed since 2016 with the new arena numbers. But I think we need data. I think we need to understand what our current business mix is, what our current revenue mix is in terms of small business, big businesses. I think we need a lot of data that I think a consultant could provide us. I think we need a branding approach. I mean, Campbell is defined as a great place to live, and play, and work, but it's considered a small town, small city. What's the right image for business and revenue?
Yeah, and I was going to bring up branding. Like you said, we're known as a great place to live, and we have a great restaurant downtown area. It's not necessarily a shopping area. It's basically come for entertainment, come live here. And the branding, I think, is very important. I know at some point when Brian and I talked a couple years ago and with Paul about what could we be as a brand, and I brought up about being a, I don't want to use the word incubator, but
No, that was right. You did.
Remember the one guy I met up in Mountain View,
Yep.
and he had it was a co-share work. They brought in the patent attorney, and then the firms that needed them were in, and
It was,
part of
Kickstarter and what? There's two words, whatever the words are. Yes, you did.
but and he came down and I met him with Paul and everything. But when the Dell Avenue area plan, which I thought was a disaster, but when that was coming forward, it was going from 1 million to 5 million square feet. But I didn't really see a theme other than they said this could be high tech or technology. Well, everybody around here is technology. You can't live in the Bay Area without being in technology. But what aspect of technology? And we don't have the square footage, maybe in Dell, but we don't have the square footage to attract a whole new Apple campus. But one of my friends who works for Apple is in business development, and they're doing little satellite versions of Apple in different areas. I said, well, why don't you come to Campbell, come over to the Dell area? There's still buildings that you could use. So how do we do that? What is that process? And bringing in a consultant who can give us the data, who can help with the branding, get us all working together with the new, what is economic development? We need that to have come back to council. What it was, 7 points before, I think in 2007, 10, whatever the number. But like you said, it's outdated. Things have changed. But I mean, I see us as, I always say, we're the darling of Silicon Valley. You know, we're the cute little sister to San Jose. So how do you play on that? How do you promote that in a, not necessarily in a living environment, but a business environment?
Well,
Do you want to be like a boutique business? Like Brian, you mentioned something about craft beer. We have a winery, the local press, Campbell Press, did an article this last week's edition on the winery over here on Pritchett. Hardly anybody knows it's over here. We have a technology part.
and I kind of see, I mean, all those are great things, and I agree with all of them. And I guess as we're having this conversation in my mind, and we talk about consultants and first steps, it seems to me, and I'm bouncing this off you for your input, that the first step is really being able to articulate what it is that we want to achieve, and you know, getting accurate data. And I understand that that's important to understand that piece of it. But then to be able to articulate when we're going after, whether it's a craft brewery or we're going after an incubator or we're going after Apple, why do they benefit us, and be able to articulate how they fit into the plan? Because more office space, that's great. They bring people and they eat lunch, and it contributes to other businesses. But would we rather have an Apple office that's not paying sales tax, but is contributing to ancillary businesses? Or would we rather have an incubator that may be selling products on the internet where we're making a sales tax on it in the same square footage? And understanding those dynamics of how each business and each industry affects us in a deeper, more meaningful way as we look at those. To count it like we do with our legislative committee, Liz, we check the box. Is this a local control issue? Is it a fiscal impact issue? Is it a diversity? Is it a variety issue? How do these businesses check the boxes so that they're high priority of what we want to achieve?
So I mean, so you are, I have no problem with anything you just said. The question is, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And what my perspective right now, and having looked at what we've been doing for the last 5 years, which I think has been not successful, and I'm being polite, is I think we need to someone with expertise, i.e. a consultant, to come in and assess where Campbell is now and what the opportunities we could potentially take advantage of.
And I think you're absolutely right. That's where we need to go, and how that's done is, devil's in those details, but just give a little bit of insight into that. We just moved to DHL for our sales tax analysis. And just even our first 2 meetings with them, Rob, you participated in those meetings?
Yeah.
The information and analysis we're getting is much more robust than we got before. And understanding your point, we're not experts in that, but hearing the experts run us through those numbers and talk to us where they're seeing industry growth. I mean, that's where I heard about these fulfillment centers. I wouldn't have thought that, an Amazon fulfillment center, maybe we don't want one, but they're making millions of dollars in sales tax wherever they're located in some industrial area because all the online purchases. And maybe that's a really up industry right now, but ancillary to that is this, we saw one of our businesses has been one of our fastest business growths over the last few years I've been here. And that was this Andre's Rotisserie. It was a catering business that was increasing its sales by 300, 400, 500% every year over the last 5 years. And it was in our top 10 sales tax, but this pandemic hit them hard. They were catering Netflix, they were catering Apple, they were catering big events. And so while 2 or 3 years ago, that looked like an exciting business and an exciting industry to be encouraging in our city, it's probably more volatile. And we're learning that through the last couple of years of COVID. And it's understanding those dynamics that we get through experts kind of walking us through those sales tax figures. So to your point, Liz, we have more robust data, but perhaps there's someone that can help us understand that data deeper, understand what they're seeing statewide, understand and see what they're in the region. And there's consultants out there that can do that, whether it's DHL or others that specifically specialize in that. But I think just in those few discussions I've had with DHL has been very helpful in those areas.
Well, that was why I added the sales tax update, because you started telling me that things were coming, we were getting a lot of sales tax.
Yeah.
I'll go back to one of the things that I said about being a startup incubator type city. I went to a trade show in Long Beach and I found out that we have a company over on Hamilton and Lee that makes flashing light things instead of flares, and has a patent, and he's selling them out of here. We're getting sales tax. My sister has a friend in a Los Gatos store, but she used a co-packing business kitchen in the Dell Avenue area. I didn't even know we had that. So part of the economic development is getting the word out of what we actually have already so that you can become a complement. I mean, I could picture a big warehouse over off of Dell that's a co-packer, and you sell out of there, or you try to generate sales tax out of that. Or we also have a guy who has a bunch of new patents on batteries for cars over in Dell. And it's kind of like, well, why is this not being made a bigger deal? Why are we not promoting that as a city? And that to me is where a consultant comes in, is that what we want to promote? How do we promote it? Where's the data? Because if a business comes in, they're going to want data sets. They're going to want to say, what are the ancillary businesses? What's the business climate? How easy is it to get a permit? I mean, that sometimes becomes the biggest deal, is how easy is it to get a permit there? The C3 zoning, we had a big discussion downtown of what is going to be allowed there, what isn't going to be allowed, what's in all the other C3s. And as time went on, we kept adding things. Do we have anything to add at this point? And so to me, that's this bigger picture of a consultant.
Yeah, and like the C3, if you look at what's happening at the Hamilton Plaza, where the Whole Foods is, there's a bunch of businesses going in there that are not sales tax generated. That whole plaza was a very big sales tax generator. It is no longer. So the relevancy is why I mentioned the C3. We really have to be thoughtful in looking back at what the implications over the last year have been and whether we've lost revenue opportunity. Brian brought up sales tax as the revenue source. He's exactly right. We need to know what the right mix is. So let me try this. I think Councilwoman Landry and I are on the same page of saying that we need a common, clear starting point to determine what our economic development plan should be, strategy should be. We need to have an expertise in obtaining that data, interpreting that data, and making recommendations on what our economic development plan should be. And it is very, very important related to the land use plan and the general plan, and that's going to be tricky. But Councilwoman Landry just brought up Dell. One of the challenges in Dell is that it has no traffic capacity. The complex with the Kaiser did a traffic study, and that has very useful information. I don't think it's more than 2 years old, maybe 3, but I think 2 years old, pre-COVID, on the impact of traffic in Dell.
There's also the Dell project on the bend at Knowles.
That's true. That's true.
And that one, Liz, which you voted for, came in and said there would be an impact to the interchange at whatever, 85. So we have that traffic data also.
Right. Thank you for mentioning that. We have to be, again, aware of location, and unintended consequences. So we can say we'd like to have a server building. That might work because there's not a lot of traffic. Having a fulfillment center might not work. So that's why we need someone to really understand what proposals that they would come up with, what suggestions, what analysis, like a fulfillment center. Is there any place in Campbell where we could actually accommodate that and have the land use to go with it? It keeps coming back to I think, Councilwoman Landry, if you agree, we need data, we need a starting point, we need an expert to help us figure out where we are and where we can go, where our opportunities are.
Yeah, I think probably what a consultant can do is provide you data, background, and some business analysis in the region, in the state, in our area. They won't know our city specifically to be able to tell you this is a perfect business in Dell or this is a perfect business there, but they can give us they can tell us what the characteristics of this business are. Generates this type of traffic, this type of revenue, and give you an idea of the impacts. Like you said, in Dell, we may be looking for high sales tax, low traffic volume. And that may be different than the Hamilton area where traffic's maybe more accepted.
Yeah, and I want to be thoughtful when you say, and maybe I'm being too narrow and not big picture enough. What you just said as an example was very good. I am very, very engaged, economically engaged with what San Jose the Diridon Station, the light rail connection, and all of the urban villages that are surrounding us. I think they and those businesses are going to impact us an awful lot more than for national trends.
One thing that I think we're going around on the same topic now for a while. Brian, you've heard us both say, bring in this person. I would just add the urgency to this. As our economy recovers, businesses are going to start picking permanent locations, especially when if the Google campus, businesses are going to start planning to be there. So the sooner we can get this going, the better. We've been talking about bringing in a consultant now, probably this whole year, if not before. And I want to get them here now. I want to start coming up with this. And going back to branding, we have two large development potentials, Fry's and Staples. That's the gateway to Campbell. That's, you come off the freeway, that's what you see. How does that go to branding? If these projects do come forward, what collaboration could we do with them to say, here's our brand, here's what we want you to have a theme as you get off the freeway. The Civic Improvement Commission is talking about a theme of gateways for the neighborhood. We went around and put up all these damn maroon signs everywhere that have a theme and have an image. That was never something that the council got to have a say in. And so branding also goes to theming, and then it goes to bringing in big businesses. One of the conversations with the Dell project was that was the gateway to Dell, that you came in off of Knowles, you turn the corner, it starts setting the theme for Dell. So we've got Staples, we've got Fry's. We also over at Hamilton and Bascom, the big tower for Google is going where the old Dick's Plaza was. Right there across the street is that other low office building with the big atrium inside. We haven't talked a lot about that whole corner. That would be another area where you have to start a theme and our branding. So we're branding ourselves, but it's got to project itself in our how we portray all these projects that are going to come forward. And we want to work with those developers. We don't want them getting so far down the line in plans that they're reluctant because it costs too much to redesign, or, you know, to get early on in the discussions. I've met with both of those people that are representing those projects, and they're coming already asking, they want this new category in the general plan, this mixed use. The guy on Campbell and Bascom wants a new
So
use.
Susan, I think you're a little bit off track.
Okay,
Okay.
but it goes to branding.
Well,
Okay, so I think my
think
biggest thing is urgency.
I
Well,
would
there's-
totally agree
we're
that.
certainly in our work plan, and Rob and I have been working forward, tried to identify the steps that are needed to develop that new plan. And we've gone through that, and we're organized in that fashion. So it's not that we're not hearing a lack of urgency. We're moving on this. And I think that a big piece of this, as Rob said, is going to be hand in hand with your land use and your general plan as well. So when we talk about the community form and community design and gateway designs, that there's certainly an element of that will come out of your general plan as well, Susan, probably at least consistent with our approach, so that we don't have two different approaches. So kind of some of this will have to be hand in hand, and we'll continue to move as quickly as we can. We can develop the plan. We don't have to wait for the general plan to be done to develop that plan, but recognizing what goes into this and what goes into the general plan and how they're consistent is going to be important.
So
Well, and that the branding, all of this, it's how do you put this all together? And to me, these things are important about a gateway, because then if we have a brand, does the gateway portray the brand? And how does that attract businesses?
Okay, I'll just say, I think that I'd like to keep us focused right now on branding in terms of economic development as a term. But more importantly, Brian, I think what I'm hoping to hear from you now is the Economic Subcommittee is providing input to your what's in the budget, which is to reorganize the Economic Development Department. And the recommendation from this subcommittee, and Susan, make sure I'm correct, is to hire a consultant to establish a clear starting point of where the city is, have the data, and include recommendations on how to move forward with an economic development plan in consort with the general plan land use map. And I think that would be what we're thinking of. And I would like to have your response and say something more specific than just saying we're working on it. I'd like to know what you think the next steps are. What can you specifically do? What are your thoughts on moving forward? What's your plan to move forward with this economic development role under the city manager?
Well, certainly the budget's in my department, and I understand the council's direction on that. I think it was important to have this discussion we did today because I honestly, in my mind, I wasn't necessarily clear what when we talk about hiring a consultant, what we're talking about today is a consultant to help us articulate the data, articulate our goals for the program, not so much a consultant to come in and work on specific programs within that, but more of a high level understanding the data. And that's important because that's the step that we were in as we were looking at, and Rob's looked at Morgan Hill's plan. I've looked at Morgan Hill's plan. We're very familiar. One of the things that we're trying to do is best practices from all of our neighboring cities, and there's good things they're all doing probably in different areas. Morgan Hill has a much more robust budget. And so I'm prepared. We can get someone on board to do some analysis and some data crunching and trends and marketing and come back and talk to us about that. I think hearing those priorities, that would be an appropriate next step in defining the plan. I'm still a firm believer. The first step is you got to know what point B is. Where, we're at point A. We got to define where point B is, and then define that path to get there.
So I'm not sure I'm quite following you. What I think I'm hearing is, first and foremost, we need to know where Campbell stands. What's the data?
Yep.
Where are businesses? Where are they located? What types of businesses? What revenue do they generate? What's the mix? And then understanding what's the potential,
Yeah.
given we're physically located. What's the potential? And
those are all discussions we've just started having with DHL, just analyzing as we move to a new vendor. They're showing off their skills and kind of walking us through that. That information is definitely out there. I don't know that we get DHL to come present, but to have a, whether it's them or someone else, consultant to take that data and break it down. I think we're both saying the same thing. We need to understand the mix. It's not just what's the mix of housing and businesses, but within that business sector, what is our mix of businesses? And where are we vulnerable, and where do we have, as we said, some opportunity for growth or diversity to help us reduce our risk, but yet maximize potential. And I think there's people out there that can help us with that, and that's going to lead us to where our priorities are and where we want to grow, and we're defining the plan.
Okay, so as in terms of next steps, you are planning to do some kind of RFP or whatever the right word is for consultant services. And what we're discussing today is what that scope of that work might start to be. Am I following? And then the next step would be to put a memo together to council, or having an update to council on the recommendation of the economic subcommittee that would support that approach. Is that something we might do? That sound right?
Yeah, I would envision we get a consultant on board, we get some data, we do some analysis, we come back and meet with the economic subcommittee, refine that, and then take that data and present a proposed plan or some concepts to bounce off the council to further that development of that plan. Maybe there's an interim step instead of coming to them and here's our complete plan. Maybe we say, this is what we've heard. Here are some suggestions we'd like to get some input on, and then we further refine that and come back with the draft plan. Maybe it's 2
Okay,
steps.
so
to-
I think you might have misunderstood. We weren't suggesting a complete plan, but okay. So if that's what you're comfortable with, if you want to hire a consultant, do this research and then come back to the subcommittee and then go to council, that's fine. The question is, what's the timing now?
Yeah, what's the timeline?
Just a matter of balancing this with everything else and getting it done and getting someone on board. So I don't know a timeline, but Rob and I could sit down and map that out and get back to you and let you know when that expectation would be.
I'm
So
happy
I
to-
would think, sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm happy to put together a work plan. I think that's, so what are the steps? What's anticipated? When do you bring on a consultant? What are the factors we have to look at? And how long is it going to take? So, I mean, that's all kind of like a work plan, right? So bring back the elements of a work plan. And if everyone's agreed to that, you fill in the blanks of how you bring the consultant in and go through those iterative steps.
I would want to have this resolved by the end of the year. That they're on board, that we're getting data sets. I mean, that gives you what, 4 months?
I think that's too long.
We'll move as quickly as possible. So let us, based on the input, I appreciate the input today. It is helpful in that. And I think we are kind of saying the same thing. So let us sit down, Rob and I, and develop that work plan and timeline and look at the engagement of a consultant. Then we'll report back to you on what those timelines are. And then we can move forward. If those dates have to move or they're not aggressive enough for you, we can have that discussion.
Well, I think I would offer Susan, I said, my reaction was that's too long. I said that for 2 reasons. One is, I think that the general plan land use map and the whole process there would benefit from this information and as soon as possible. And I think it fits into the scope of the general plan about what's the right mix of businesses and residential and how that fits into our arena numbers. So I think the data portion of this sooner rather than later would be beneficial.
I'm saying we're done in the end of the year with what the plan is. We've come to council, we've gotten input. Because you're 2 weeks away from finishing this first step, from my guess, where you are right now. You're at least a week, if not 2 weeks out. So if we meet again in 2 weeks and the proposal goes out the next day, still going to take a couple weeks to get someone on board. We're in the end of September. So I'm saying, let's get the data, let's get the subcommittee, let's get enough that we can come to council before the end of the year to finalize this and do whatever the next steps past that are.
Yeah, so again, I'd be fine if you're saying that we would have a recommendation to council on a new economic development plan. Is that
By
what
the end of the year.
Okay, I misunderstood. Okay, I would support that.
Yep.
But the data portion would be.
Oh, yeah, the data's, we want soon. Urgency is behind this or in front of it.
The only thing I'll add is, as we get into finishing the general plan, we had these discussions in August. The focus will be on land use and the focus will be on housing, right? We have a deadline. And then a key consideration, Mayor Gibbons, you brought up is CEQA, right? So if you do any of these changes, so at some point, we'll talk about this in the next council meeting, we will have to close the door on the land use changes that have CEQA. We'll just have to be strategic about contemplations and strategies that happen separate from CEQA and those that you have to decide and then just adhere to get the CEQA process going.
I mean, one of the past examples, Rob, is if you look at McGlinchey, the McGlinchey area, the Christchurch area, the McGlinchey area versus the Dell area. Never mind the South Winchester section. What businesses go there? What changes are going there? Long time ago, there was a discussion that the McGlinchey area needed to stay the way it was because it provided opportunities for certain types of businesses and the city needed those types of businesses. The Delaware area also provided more of the manufacturing kind of businesses and the tilt up and so on and so forth. So those, I think, are the big picture points that you're bringing. Do we want to change what happens in these areas? That kind of thing. And I think you're absolutely right. We need to understand the big picture that works with the CEQA.
And we had said at our previous meeting, Rob, you had said we have 9 months to get to starting the CEQA, which is going to take 6 to 9 months. So in that point,
Yeah.
we're out a month already from when you said 9 months.
Well, I'll say this, and of course, this discussion will happen next week, is we're targeting to generally lock down the big land use changes by the end of the year, right? So the consultant can get the CEQA done in 9 months to hit our housing element targets.
Yeah.
So
That
if
makes
it's
sense.
economic development driven, it's either, hey, or do we know what we want and that goes in by then? Or it's, okay, let's wait and have a broader discussion around that. And that happens maybe post general plan adoption.
You have to submit it at this point.
Well, I appreciate the dialogue. It was good. I'm glad that we're all on the same page. At least it seems like we are. So let's keep moving that direction. That's always a positive. And then Rob and I'll work together on a work plan, and then we'll set up another touch base in a couple weeks with the committee.
That would
2
be
weeks.
great.
Okay.
2
Yeah, we'll
weeks.
work on getting a date.
2 weeks.
I hear you. We'll find a date. Finding dates
Okay.
sometimes is difficult, but we'll get you on schedule.
Okay.
All right,
Brian-
thanks, everybody.
Brian, do you have a couple minutes to
I have
talk?
to run to another meeting here, Susan, but can I call you this afternoon?
Yeah,
There's a
what
quick-
time-ish? About?
About 1 o'clock-ish. Do you,
Yeah,
is it quick?
that's good.
I can talk
one's
right now
good.
if it's 5 minutes or less.
5 minutes, yes.
All right.
You want to call me?
The rest of us are leaving.
They
Oh,
can
can we
just log
stay
off. We
on
can
this?
stay
Are
on.
you the host, Brian?
Yeah, we could just stay
Okay,
on here.
let's stay on here then.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Liz. Oh, they're gone.
I'm piping in. I'm just going to stop broadcasting so you guys can have a private conversation. So give me about 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right.